of war damage in Ukraine science sector and its consequences report. Recognizing the critical role of science and scientific infrastructure in the national strategic development, the natural science sector prioritized assessing the impact of war on Ukraine's scientific facility in 2022. Without such assessment, meaningful support for the scientific community will become challenging. To address this, the national science sector engaged the Junior Academy of Science in Ukraine, which is a UNESCO Category 2 centers, to conduct a comprehensive study. We witnessed the challenge faced by the Junior Academy of Science in collecting data, and we deeply appreciate the effort in producing this report. Additionally, online platform has been established to regularly update the data, which will significantly aid UNESCO in its ongoing assessment process and facilitate timely support. I'm pleased to start the symposium with a welcome address by Ms. Gabriela Romas, Assistant Director General of Social and Human Sciences at UNESCO.
Thank you so much, Xiaopeng, and thank you, Mary, thank you for this fantastic work that you have done. And thank you all for being here. I was just coming in when Nicola told me that I come dressed as Ukrainian, which I find very appropriate.
Very beautiful.
But I also come with great interest in this important work. Let me now switch to the welcoming speech. Mesdames, Messieurs, dès sa fondation, la UNESCO a été conçue pour jouer un rôle primordial dans les domaines des sciences et pour servir de plateforme essentielle aux scientifiques du monde entier. Et pourquoi? Parce que les sciences apportent des réponses essentielles et informent les décisions politiques pour résoudre les défis actuels et de demain. Elles permettent de construire des sociétés de paix et favorisent la coopération internationale, même lorsque les relations politiques et diplomatiques sont rompues. Mais pour que la production et la coopération scientifique soient fructueuses, il faut un écosystème qui favorise le libre-échange des idées où les scientifiques peuvent travailler en liberté et en sécurité. Et c'est justement parce que le science joue un rôle capital pour la cohésion des sociétés et pour le développement durable que nous devons le défendre en temps de paix comme en temps de conflit. Ces principes, l'UNESCO a fait des principes de droit international, avec notamment la recommandation concernant la science et les chercheurs scientifiques, mise en jour en 2017, ainsi que la recommandation sur la science ouverte de 2021. Il s'agit d'outils normatifs essentiels dans le soutien qu'apporte notre organisation à la recherche scientifique dans toutes ses dimensions. La science, bien sûr, c'est aussi partie de notre nom, avec la culture et l'éducation, c'est central dans ce contexte. Protéger les sciences en période de guerre, c'est le cœur du rapport que nous vous présenterons aujourd'hui. Sachez, par ailleurs, que nous finalisons un autre rapport sur les défis auxquels est confrontée la communauté scientifique ukrainienne, dont certaines conclusions préliminaires vous seront aussi présentées aujourd'hui par mon collègue Kostas Tavaras. Mais je reviens sur le rapport publié aujourd'hui qui décrit l'impact terrible causé depuis 12 ans par l'invasion de l'Ukraine par la Fédération de Russie sur l'écosystème scientifique ukrainien. Vous assisterez à une présentation détaillée de ces résultats dans ce moment, mais permettez-moi de retenir deux données qui nous sont vraiment frappées. La première, 9 institutions de recherche sur 10, 9 sur 10, instituts ou universités, ont vu leur fonctionnement fortement perturbé de fait de déplacements internes ou la migration de leurs chercheurs provoqués par la guerre. Donc, un impact énorme. Le deuxième, 1,2 milliard de dollars mais Amalie m'a dit que le ministre va dire quelque chose. Donc ça continue, c'est un impact qu'on fait la mesure mais qu'il ne s'arrête pas. C'est le coût de dommages causés par la guerre aux infrastructures et équipements scientifiques de ceux des universités. Et face à cette situation terrible, les rapports lancent un appel inédit à l'action. En Ukraine, bien sûr, mais plus globalement partout où les communautés scientifiques sont menacées par les guerres et les conflits. Avec un mot d'ordre sans appel, comme nous le faisons déjà pour la culture, pour les artistes, pour l'information, pour l'éducation, nous devons agir collectivement pour soutenir les sciences et les scientifiques en contexte de crise. Et nous vivons dans ce monde en crise. Et ce qui se joue aussi, c'est bien sûr en premier lieu le sort des chercheurs et des infrastructures, mais c'est aussi la condition de la reconstruction. Car cette perte de capital scientifique est susceptible d'hypothéquer les conditions futures de redressement de l'Ukraine. Et cette perte, et c'est particulièrement vrai dans le cas de l'Ukraine et dans certaines disciplines dans lesquelles le pays a fait développer des savoir-faire exceptionnels, tels que le secteur de l'informatique, de la physique nucléaire ou encore de l'astronomie, représentant également une perte pour la science mondiale. Ce rapport PME constitue donc une première étape. Et le deuxième dépend de nous et dépend de vous. Car il s'agit maintenant de tirer les conclusions de ce rapport pour réfléchir ensemble, et c'est précisément l'objet de cette symposium aux mesures de soutien qui pourraient être mises en œuvre. Pour ce faire, la mobilisation de tous est essentielle. Mobilisation financière, évidemment, pour la restauration de l'infrastructure scientifique publique de l'Ukraine. Mais mobilisation aussi technique pour que les chercheurs et chercheuses ukrainiens puissent continuer, malgré les conflits, à travailler dans les meilleures conditions possibles. Mobilisation enfin pour reconstruire les équipes de recherche et le savoir-faire particulier. Car la science est une aventure collective qui dépasse souvent les compétences individuelles de ses membres. Et c'est la seule condition de cette mobilisation collective que nous pourrons ouvrir pour faire de la science l'un des socles de la reconstruction de l'Ukraine. Et plus généralement, des sociétés meurtries par les conflits. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Edith, for your insightful remarks. And next, I would like to invite you to listen to the record message from the Minister of Education and Science of Ukraine.
Збройна агресія Росії проти України розпочалася з окупації Криму та гібридної війни на Донбасі у 2014 році. Вона продовжилася як відкрите повномасштабне вторгнення 24 лютого 2022 року. Її прояв супроводжується безпрецедентним знищенням українського цивільного населення, в тому числі дітей, руйнуванням українських міст, наукових, культурних і духовних цінностей. Саме тому керівництво держави та громадяни змушені апелювати до норм міжнародного гуманітарного права у пошуках міжнародного захисту, справедливості та покарання агресора. В умовах війни сфера науки зазнала значних втрат, які суттєво вплинули на її суб'єкти, інфраструктуру, механізми функціонування. З лютого 2022 року по січень 2024 року було пошкоджено або зруйновано майже 1500 будівель, що належать 177 науковим установам та закладам вищої освіти. Інженерна інфраструктура науково-дослідницьких установ також зазнала втрат. 188 інженерних споруд, включаючи лабораторні комплекси, експериментальні майданчики, були пошкоджені або зруйновані. Зараз, коли боротьба з російським агресором ще триває, вартість відновлення тільки нерухомої майнової інфраструктури наукового сектору України мінімально оцінюється у понад 1,3 мільярди доларів США. Через пошкодження та руйнування будівель було повністю знищено або виведено з ладу понад 750 одиниць наукового обладнання, яке використовується в широкому спектрі досліджень. Понад 640 одиниць такого обладнання не підлягає відновленню і потребує заміни. Наші науковці опинились в умовах, коли вони мають дбати не тільки про професійну реалізацію та забезпечення виживання України, але й про власну безпеку. Частина наукових та науково-педагогічних кадрів з початку війни втратила фактичне місце роботи. Вимушена була покинути власне житло. Інші були змушені виїхати за межі країни. В лютому 2022 року за проведеними Міністерством освіти і науки України та Національною академією наук і іншими учасниками дослідженням в секторі науки працювало 88,5 тисяч наукових та науково-педагогічних працівників. Відтоді понад 10 тисяч українських науковців були змушені емігрувати або переміститися всередині країни. З них 5,5 тисяч були змушені виїхати до інших країн, а решта стали внутрішньо переміщеними особами. Близько 30% усіх українських науковців були змушені працювати віддалено. Ще 1500 науковців пішли добровольцями на військову службу. Понад 100 наукових та науково-педагогічних працівників вже загинули на цій війні, захищаючи Україну при виконанні службових обов'язків або внаслідок бойових дій. Очевидно, що ці дані щодня, на жаль, змінюються. Слід пам'ятати найголовніше. Українські науковці сьогодні, не дивлячись на складні умови та обмежені ресурси, відіграють важливу роль у зміцненні нашої країни, посилюють її спроможність до боротьби з агресором та наближають її подальше європейське майбутнє. Працюємо, аби посилювати українську науку і науковців щодня.
The Minister of Education and Science of Ukraine for studying this message. So next, I'm pleased to hand over to Mr. Stanislav Довгий, President of the Junior Academy of Science of Ukraine and take it, please.
Excellence, chers collègues et amis, je suis honoré d'être devant vous aujourd'hui pour mettre en lumière l'impact profond de la guerre en Ukraine sur l'infrastructure scientifique de notre pays, tel qu'elle est détaillée dans les rapports commandés par l'UNESCO et préparés par le Centre catégorie de l'UNESCO, Jeune Académie des Sciences ukrainiennes. La guerre actuelle a laissé les cicatrices qui s'attendent profondément dans le paysage scientifique. Notre rapport dresse un tableau de la destruction infligée à 177 institutions scientifiques et éducatives, avec 1443 bâtiments et 188 structures d'ingénierie ravagées par les bombardements et attaques de l'artillerie. C'est une institution qui, comprenant les académies nationales de sciences d'Ukraine et d'autres académies d'industrie ukrainiennes, sont le socle de l'avancement scientifique en Ukraine. Pourtant, leurs fondations ont été ébranlées jusqu'à plus profond. Parmi les victimes, on compte des institutions emblématiques telles que l'Université d'État de Métropole et le Musée de littérature mémoriale de Grigori Skovoroda, symbole des riches patrimoine culturel et éducatif de l'Ukraine. Depuis, les démarches scientifiques ont été était une fille à des centres de recherche plutôt que l'Institut des matériels supérieurs Bakou, l'Université nationale parisienne des sportifs et les instituts polytechniques et médicales du parti. Ces pères ne sont pas seulement les briques du mortier, elles représentent les rêves de cette décennie de progrès à l'innovation scientifique. Le coût financier de cette destruction est ahurissant avec les estimations préliminaires fixant le coût de restauration de l'infrastructure scientifique de l'Ukraine à un minimum de 1,2 milliard de dollars américains. Cependant, le véritable coût va au-delà de simples chiffres monétaires. La perte de plus de 650 documents scientifiques, ainsi de la destruction de 614 instruments scientifiques, ont porté un coup sévère aux capacités de recherche. Des institutions telles que l'Institut pour le problème de sécurité des centrales nucléaires, situé dans la zone de Tchernobyl, et le Centre scientifique ukrainien d'écologie de la mer ont vu leur équipement critique détruit, amplifiant les risques écologiques dans la région. Pourtant, les conséquences vont au-delà de l'homme physique. Le déclin de l'activité de publication de recherche, notamment à l'Académie nationale des sciences reflète une tendance plurielle de régression scientifique. En 2022 et 2023, nous avons constaté une base significative au nombre de monographies et d'articles de recherche publiés à l'étranger, témoignant de l'impact perturbateur de conflit de la communication scientifique. Depuis, du part des scientifiques, a créé une suite de serveurs d'une ampleur sans précédent. Environ 11,8%, les chercheurs ukrainiens en étaient contraints d'étrangers, cherchant refuge et opportunité à l'étranger. Cette migration a marqué non seulement été de levier de talent de l'Ukraine, mais a également fracture des réseaux de collaboration essentiels au progrès scientifique. La jeune académie des sciences d'Ukraine, chargée de nourrir la prochaine génération de chercheurs, a été particulièrement touchée par ce conflit. Des milieux étudiants des clubs scientifiques situés dans les territoires occupés de régions de Donetsk, de Lugansk, de Crimée, de Kherson et de Zaporijia ont été des racines laissées en vie dans l'éducation et la sensibilisation scientifique. Cependant, malgré ces défis, les institutions de recherche et les universités ukrainiennes ont fait preuve de résilience. Malgré les pertes et les méthodes de lien solides avec les scientifiques étrangers, au chemin de la continuité des opérations nourrissant l'espoir pour l'avenir. L'un des plus grands besoins de l'Ukrainien aujourd'hui est de soutenir notre jeunesse qui reconstruira notre pays demain. Nous avons besoin d'équipements pour les écoles de la laboratorie mobile, d'expositions muséales interactives pour apprentissage intéressant une aide psychologique, ainsi que les moyens de transport pour acheminer les enfants vers les lieux plus sûrs des centres scientifiques mobiles. Je voudrais vous donner un exemple de courage. Frédéric Chandor, professeur à l'université de Urgor, a continué à donner des cours aux étudiants alors qu'il se trouvait dans les tranchées sur leur front. En conclusion, je tiens à exprimer des remarques gratuites sincères de l'UNESCO pour avoir convoqué ce symposium pour son soutien indéfectible de sciences ukrainiennes et ses temps mutuels. Ensemble, réformons notre engagement et reconstruire et à la revitaliser l'infrastructure scientifique de l'Ukraine et veillant à ce que la flamme de savoir permette de briller face à des difficultés. Merci pour votre attention.
Thank you, Mr. Довгий, for your valuable insights. Now, I would like to welcome Mr. Maksim, the Chief of the Basic Science Research, Engineering and Innovation section of the UNESCO, to discuss the key findings of the report and what could be done to recover damage to the scientific infrastructure. Please.
Thank you very much, Robin. Good afternoon, everyone. The report that is the subject of this symposium today has a lot of data and important results, and this is what we are going to discuss today, the major results and how we can use these results to help us develop a potential recovery plan. Basically, just a quick introduction. Scientific infrastructure, when we say facilities or scientific infrastructure, it refers to different things, mainly, for example, laboratories, research laboratories in the universities and research institutes, also observatories, for example, which are very important also facilities, supercomputers, neutron sources, which are important for applications in fields like physics, chemistry, material science, and also something like biobanks. All these are important facilities that fall under what we call scientific infrastructure. So this is a quick definition and why the scientific infrastructure is important. They are important for several reasons that we all probably know. First of all, that the research infrastructure serves the scientists with resources to foster innovation and also groundbreaking research. The advancement in scientific achievements and also enhanced education and boosting infrastructure leads at the end to growth in the economy. Research infrastructure also helps scientists to tackle challenges, major challenges, and also to drive positive change and solutions. In addition, the scientific information are important for policy makers. Governments rely on this kind of scientific information in order to develop plans. So the study, which is the subject of today's report, has four major objectives. The first objective is to evaluate the infrastructure damage, basically by investigating the harm to the different research institutions and universities, and also to assess the impact on the laboratories and the equipment and some movable properties. The second objective is the sectoral coverage, the different sectors in general. For example, something like the National Academy of Sciences represents 48% of the total R&D in the country. So assessing the damage in these facilities of the National Academy of Sciences is very important. Also, the analysis is extended to other sectoral academies and different fields like agriculture, medicine, education, arts, and so on. University sector is also very important, so some of the universities under the Ministry of Education and Science are covered, including scientific institutions linked to other ministries. Finally, another important objective of this report was to assess the impact on the scientists, on the scientific personnel, and also to analyze the impact on the workforce. And this is represented here mainly by the number of displaced scientists, either internally or externally. However, as you will see in the next presentation, our colleagues in social science will have another report with more details on specifically this subject of scientists and personnel. The methodology that was used to develop or to develop this report or to collect the data has three main steps. The first one was data structuring and classification by creating big data system analysis, and usually this is very important when we handle a huge amount of data. It's very important to have this ontological engineering and data clustering. It's a mechanism to handle big data. Second, Junior Academy of Sciences identified the different categories that needs to be covered. These categories, for example, the buildings, the equipment, the laboratories, the personnel, as I said, and so on. And then the data collection process started, and then there was an automated work place using the first engineering and data cluster that was the first step. Finally, a platform, an online platform was created, and the online platform, all the data that are collected are being uploaded regularly to this platform, and they are continuously being updated in order to keep us and the different academics informed of the current situation in the scientific infrastructure. Now I will mention some of the results of this report. Of course, we cannot mention all the results here. However, I invite you please to look at the report with an estimated cost needed of 16.9 million and something like Institute of Nuclear Research lost about 12 buildings with estimated cost needed of 2.4 million. In the university sector, under the Ministry of Education and Science, we have about 65 institutions were damaged, and this estimated restoration cost of these buildings is about 1 billion US dollars. And again, as you see here in these graphs, most of the equipment, the laboratory equipment, cannot be reused. They just need to be replaced. And the estimated restoration cost in this case is more than 16 million US dollars. Another important impact is on the scientific personnel or the scientists, and you see this graph is showing the decline in the number of scientists in different institutions. The one that suffered the most is Kharkiv National University. They lost about 354 scientists. This includes both internal and external displacements. So the total number of scientists is shown here, and we can see that about 5,000 are internally displaced due to the war, and more than 5,500 are living now outside Ukraine. They are hosted by about 53 countries. The majority are living in Germany. Another important impact is the scientific output, represented here by the scientific publications. The decline in number of publications, not in the number, in the percentage, there was 7% drop in the number of publications in 2022 and 6% in 2023. These numbers might not look high, but this is because, as you know, scientific publications take a long time to be published, so probably most of the published work now is the result of like 2-3 years earlier, and this means that in the next 2-3 years we are expecting a much higher decline in the number of publications. This is a summary of the numbers that appeared in this report with much more detail in the report, as I mentioned. Some examples here, as I mentioned, more than 1,400 buildings belonging to 177 research institutes and universities are damaged or destroyed. 53 countries are hosting now about more than 5,500 scientists from the growth in the number of scientists who are performing research, and the total estimated cost for the restoration is about 1.3 billion US dollars. Now let us go more to some analysis of the current situation in order to help us to design a potential recovery plan, as this was actually the main purpose of this report. First, we need to identify what are the major challenges. The first big challenge here is, of course, the working environment. It is unfavorable working environment due to the current situation, and for that we need to work on improving this by providing maybe better equipped laboratories. The second main challenge is the decline in the scientific collaboration, the collaboration with the scientists or research institutes outside the country. So we need to work on establishing collaborative networks and platforms to facilitate interdisciplinary research and knowledge sharing. And the third challenge here is the reduced financial support. And for this, we need to diversify the funding sources by seeking private sector partnerships, by international grants, and also by prioritizing the research that has a societal impact. This is very important. What you see here now is the strategies to design a recovery plan, a general one, not necessarily only for the current situation in Ukraine, however, in general. First, we need to prioritize the damaged infrastructure based on urgency and impact. So there are some critical facilities like hospitals, for example, but there are also research centers and educational institutions. Second, we need to propose strategies for each category. So we need to identify the emergency repairs or what needs to be repaired urgently, and then international collaboration, and then the funding sources. Third, we need to define clear objectives. So the objectives could be restoration of critical infrastructure, rebuilding research capacity, and ensuring continuity of scientific work. And we also need to create a timeline for the implementation, of course, short, medium, these previous activities. What I highlight here is what we can do under the current circumstances. Maybe the rest will need the situation to be changed. When we started thinking of potential recovery plan under the current situation, we thought about what are the criteria actually to consider. So we thought first of the location of the institutes that we can work with. For example, those who suffered from the war, however, maybe now outside the conflict zone. And the second is the importance of the institute, the rank, the quality of the scientific production. And the third is the significant damage in the scientific equipment. We looked at all these in different regions based on the data in the report, and we found that we can link all this to one of our recent initiatives, which is the remote access to scientific equipment. Under the current situation, it's perhaps still difficult to physically repair equipment or target some laboratories to be fixed. However, remote access might offer some solutions here. And this remote access to scientific equipment has three phases. The first phase is to identify laboratories or institutions that are willing to share their laboratories or their facilities with us. Second is to identify also the needed equipment, and this will be done directly with the scientists in Ukraine, and also select one or two scientists from different regions to be sent out to be trained, and then go back. And then the scientists travel to the first ones that are willing to help us to receive the training. The second phase will be after receiving the training. Two is to go back home, use the equipment remotely, and at the same time train the counterparts, train others, not only for research but also for education. And the third phase is, of course, to have full remote access, and this will open a lot of channels and collaboration with many institutes. This is what we are hoping to do, and here I will just show you one quick example to show you that this initiative is working successfully. We started this for Africa in collaboration with CNRS here in France and International Union of Crystallography and the Lorraine University. We were actually inspired by one of the professors there who was helping African scientists, and he started having a vision for this idea many years ago, and we started working with him, pushing for this initiative. And now, as you see, we started this in summer of 2022. And here you can see that the scientists, we are online here with the scientists in Africa back home are using the equipment, and this is when we inaugurated this kind of activity, and it's working now successfully in 3 countries in Africa. We have full access, and we have here these 3 countries here, these 3 ones. Congo, Cameroon, and Congo, Cameroon, and Cote d'Ivoire. And the other countries, 5 other countries actually received the training, and very soon we will be also having remote access. So the model is working quite successfully, and now we are trying to expand this to other techniques and other countries, and of course it will be very important to use this in case of crisis as we are facing right now. So what kind of resources we need? We need support in order to do that. We won't be able to do it alone. We need different kinds of support. The first is the in-kind contribution, which means that we need laboratories and institutions to allow us to access their facilities. Any equipment that are important for scientific research and that can be remotely accessed, we need to work with different institutions on that. The second is the financial support, which is needed to support the scientists to travel, to be trained, to travel and accommodation, and also we have another agreement with a corporate that is providing us with second-hand equipment in this situation, so we will link the remote access initiative to providing the scientists with second-hand equipment that they need urgently in order to process their work, and in the end we will have the full remote access initiative, and the impact of this will be is to improve the working conditions, to compensate the decline in the scientific outputs, and also to establish international collaboration and to enhance the knowledge sharing. So this is what we can do under the current circumstances. And for bioscience, different techniques, we need about 1 million in order to cover, to train maybe about 30 scientists. So at the end, I urge you all please to support us in this, and I would like at the end to thank Junior Academy of Sciences. They face a lot of difficulties while collecting the data, so thank you so much for them, and also for the National Academy of Sciences. And Junior Academy of Sciences is one of our 23 Category 2 centers under the auspices of UNESCO. It's in the field of basic sciences and engineering, and it's one of the 6 in Europe. And in the end, I would like to thank the colleagues in the natural science sector and the natural science communication officer and the communication and public engagement team, and also our vice here. And in advance, I thank all the stakeholders who can support this recovery plan. Thank you very much.
Now I would like to invite Mr. Konstantinos Taradas, Program Specialist at the Social and the Human Science Sector of UNESCO, to discuss preliminary insights on the status of scientists in wartime in Ukraine.
Thank you, Children, for giving me the floor. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we're fully aware of the horrors that war inflicts on societies and peoples. UNESCO has documented, as you very well know, its impact on education and cultural institutions, and has been involved in rebuilding cultural sites and institutions post-conflict. However, there has been scant investigation and research about the effects of war on scientists and science ecosystems. The information that we have heard today by the Minister, and particularly the results shared by my colleague, I think are pioneering in that particular sense. Yet, as our Assistant Director General said in her introduction, UNESCO's 2017 recommendation on science and scientific researchers underscores that science, scientific infrastructure, scientists should be protected also in the instance of conflict. And we know the critical role of science in enhancing resilience and fueling a sustainable recovery. The report, of which I will be sharing some preliminary findings, complements the one that was presented by my colleague by delving into the challenges of Ukrainian science. Let me say a few words about the methodology. The sources of this research are prior research findings, statistical data, but also focus group discussions conducted with the participation of Ukrainian scientists. The latter covered diverse topics. We looked into the issue of challenges and needs of women researchers and scientists, support to young scientists, scientists of relocated higher education institutions, and so on. So the analysis highlights critical issues that you have already heard in the previous presentation, such as the drinking resources, the brain drain, financial struggles, and professional hurdles. It further identifies gaps in research and offers comprehensive recommendations to bolster the status and well-being of researchers in Ukraine. A main conclusion, not surprisingly, is the alarming decline in human capital. The ongoing conflict has exacerbated the situation, intensifying the brain drain. You heard from the minister that a substantial number of Ukrainian scientists, especially women with children, have been displaced or have left the country altogether. More than 5,500 have left the country, and this represents a potential loss for the country itself and its scientific development. Repatriation efforts do not seem to bring results. That's something that we will be seeing also in the recommendations for the way forward. And those abroad need financial aid and social support. Not surprisingly, most researchers reported worsened financial conditions, with some struggling to afford basic needs. According to the research conducted by the Science Reload initiative that was in 2023, some 83.8% of respondents to a survey claimed that their financial situation worsened. A large part, some 40% of the researchers said that they had funds for food only, while 27.7% could afford food and clothes but faced difficulties buying long-term use objects. Importantly, looking at the way scientists work and perform, safety and technical limitations are impacting the work efficiency of Ukrainian scientists. More than 1 in 2, or 54.3%, said that they were unable to conduct research at the same level as before the war due to unsafety and technical difficulties, including power or weather outages and the mining of fields. Also, another factor to take into account is that international mobility has been slowed. There's a challenge, particularly for male scientists aged 18 to 60 due to martial law and the conditions that accompany it. Something that echoes a finding that was mentioned by Amal, the Web of Science data indicates the publishing activity of Ukrainian researchers decreasing by approximately 10%. As you said, Amal, this figure is likely to grow, but at the same time, it is an indication of the resilience of Ukrainian scientists. Against such a dramatic backdrop, mobilization at the national and international levels offers a glimmer of hope. Ukraine's education law, as amended in March 2022, ensures that during martial law, all educators and researchers keep their job positions, average wages, have a place to live irrespective of whereabouts. Also, the state supports Ukrainian scientists by granting them salary bonuses, scholarships, and awards. At the same time, at the international level, we see that there has been growing interest in the situation of Ukraine's science ecosystem and Ukrainian scientists. Various international initiatives provide funding, scholarships, and research opportunities for Ukrainian scientists, facilitated by platforms like Science for Ukraine. We hope that this trend will translate in a more systematic emphasis on science in emergencies and conflict situations. And in fact, UNESCO offers a strong platform for taking this up, particularly since that developed the decision of the last General Conference to create a program of freedom essays of scientists. Actually, we will be discussing the issue and the implementation of this project in the context of the 2019 session of the Executive Board starting later this week. So going forward, in terms of what needs to be done, the research that we're finalizing identified a number of research gaps where we need further investigation. And this includes in-depth research on challenges and needs of Ukrainian scientists abroad, in country, and or those who are internally displaced. Assessment of existing support instruments against the needs of young researchers, but also more broadly for researchers and scientists. Ways to leverage the Ukrainian scientific diaspora, and also looking at the impact of brain drain on future recovery. The report resonates with the message of today's event. There is a need for a stronger use and role of science and scientific researchers in Ukraine. An enhanced dialogue between the state and scientists is a key to successful post-war recovery and reconstruction. So the report highlighted a number of recommendations that I would like to very briefly present to you. This includes, first of all, the need for a gradual increase of funding for scientific activities. A starting point to consider is that in 2022, the DPP that was dedicated to science was only 0.33%. And so it would be important, given the circumstances and taking into account the limitations of the current context, that this can be increased. Obviously, will allow for expanding research projects and the support that is provided to scientists. Ensure, second, an inclusive science ecosystem for all scientists irrespective of identity factors and addressing their specific needs, and we heard about the situation of women scientists. Thirdly, remote employment opportunities, and there was an example that was discussed previously by my colleague, to facilitate non-residential employment for Ukrainian scientists in foreign institutions and to facilitate the employment of researchers outside Ukraine in Ukrainian scientific institutions under a remote work agreement. Fourthly, to expand international grant opportunities for Ukrainian scientific institutions, to develop support strategies to reintegrate returning researchers, prioritizing those with foreign academic experience, develop a national strategy on science popularization using inter alia communication campaigns, strengthen academic policies which will allow to revise dissertation rules and hold more grant competitions for young scientists, support displaced higher education institutions, prioritize displaced universities in research competitions, and adjust policies to accommodate their needs, looking into issues such as funding, requirements for research results, student-to-teacher ratio, etc. A more in-depth presentation that was announced by APG Ramos will be following in the next couple of months, where we will have the opportunity to unpack the recommendations and look at their practical translation into action. Our focus will be how to help continue research, how to support Ukrainian scientists, and the program that I mentioned earlier would be an ideal platform to do that. In closing, I would like to express my gratitude to the team of Science and Risk, the Ukrainian NGO that helped us with the identification of these first findings and the formulation of specific recommendations. Their dedication and that of their partners allowed really obtaining quick results in a very short and demanding time frame. And of course, I would like to thank our Kyiv colleagues who have been of enormous help in promoting this work. Finally, science is an invaluable resource for Ukraine's resilience and post-war recovery. This was acknowledged by the minister, but also it's really the underlying theme of all these presentations that we've heard today. We're certain that the evidence generated by UNESCO reports will trigger a stronger commitment by national counterparts, but also, and importantly, a greater investment by the international community. This is a key for Ukraine's future, but is also a critical lesson for concurrent and future emergencies. Thank you very much.
and we're looking forward to see this report soon. And now, in fact, we have scheduled to see the 15 minutes and Q&A session. But right now, due to the time limitation, you can only have another 5. We can have 5 minutes. Let's see how many questions we have. And also, as you know, we also have the online participants, and we also work on whether if we have any questions, we can also fill the chat. But if we could not get the question answered, of course, we are always available, and we have a separate discussion during the coffee break. And as I mentioned, we can also use the during the reception to have some informal discussion as well. So with this, I try to open the floor for questions, and please identify yourself. Yeah, thanks.
Hello everybody, I'm the Swiss permanent delegate to UNESCO, and I'm glad to attend this conversation on reviewing scientific ecosystem in Ukraine and other related topics. I have a very general question, and maybe it will be very easy to answer. I understood and checked also in the meantime about this report that you were presenting in the beginning, this analysis of war damage to the Ukrainian science sector. And then I heard about another report that UNESCO will produce on a slightly different topic related to the status of researchers. What I miss, and maybe it is existing and UNESCO already produced a report on it and I just don't know, so please tell me in that case. I miss a kind of mapping of what is already existing, because there are already a lot of actors, some of them were mentioned, Scholars at Risk, this Reload Foundation, this network of Ukrainian scientists. There are a lot of academies, universities already involved and active in supporting, helping Ukrainian scientists. Rebuilding is another topic, of course, reconstruction. What I miss is a kind of mapping of what is existing in order to understand where UNESCO can really play a role, because it's obvious that some things UNESCO cannot do, will not reconstruct on the ground infrastructure, I suppose, and will not be involved in very developed and highly developed scientific research. So yes, I would like just to have this kind of mapping exercise to better understand where UNESCO can really play an added role, which would represent an added value for the science sector in Ukraine. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, yeah, please.
Thank you very much. Dear participants, dear organizers of this event, I represent here the Russian delegation to UNESCO. Unfortunately, we regret to inform that the report called Analysis of War Damages to the Ukraine Science Sector includes inappropriate political wording and goes beyond the scientific mandate of the organization. Also, a disclaimer states that the responsibility for the content lies with respective authors. This publication has been issued under the UNESCO auspices, but UNESCO is not a group of countries. It is a global organization with 194 member states. The report is based on a one-sided information provided by one scientific organization. How can member states rely on such biased data? In this regard, we have 3 questions. First, on what basis the UNESCO logo is used in this report? Second, what are the grounds of holding this so-called symposium? And third question, I would like to inquire from which budget was prepared and issued this report. Thank you very much for your attention and response in advance.
Yeah, please.
Thank you very much, Deputy Permanent Delegate of Lithuania. I would like to thank you for organizing this presentation of this report and of this symposium, which actually helps us better understand the scale of Russia's war impact of the Ukrainian science sector, but also discuss the role of UNESCO and other international partners towards protecting and rebuilding the sector. Russia's war in Ukraine continues to impact all areas of UNESCO mandate. As we know, it kills journalists, media workers, destruction and damage of Ukrainian cultural sites, scientific infrastructure and research infrastructure, such as atomic physics laboratory of Karazin National University in Kharkiv, a chemical laboratory of Chernobyl, and many others. The destruction of Ukrainian scientific infrastructure is only half of the coin. Russia's aggression against Ukraine has primarily resulted from disruptions to Ukrainian human capital and reduced international scientific cooperation. The war in Ukraine has already disrupted the lives of scientists in Ukrainian research institutions and universities. Many had to flee their homes, relocate to other parts of Ukraine or abroad, or simply, as Minister said, join the army forces. The war has also hindered the exchange of scientific knowledge and ideas. Travel restrictions and the general insecurity in the country have made it more difficult for Ukrainian researchers to attend conferences and seminars. UNESCO has a key role to play in order to help Ukrainian science sector. We thank all the member states who have responded to UNESCO's appeal for resources to support its action in Ukraine and mobilized over $51 million. We urge all the donors to continue doing so. It's up to Russia to end this senseless war of choice. UNESCO's role is carefully assess, monitor, and register all these damages in order to help perpetrator into account. We reiterate our demand that the Russian Federation immediately withdraw all its military forces from the territory of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders, including Autonomous Republic of Crimea and the city of Sevastopol, and immediately, completely, and unconditionally stop its military aggression. I thank you.
Other question? No, any other question from the Do you have any other question? Yeah, please.
Thank you for your detailed presentation. I'm from Japanese delegation. I have a question to learn more about the situation. I understand that the destruction of research and university facilities has serious consequences for research activities. On the other hand, I would like to know the situation of human resources of scientists. So if the scientists are protected from attack, and also I would like to know if they exempt from military service and are able to continue their research activities. Thank you.
So if you don't have any questions, and maybe we try to answer some of the technical questions. And I think you see that for the distinguished delegates from Swiss and Japan, we talk about exactly what the tool, the study will be the forecast. We are more focused, from the natural science sector, more focused about the infrastructure, but of course we also touch base about the scientists. And but I think for our colleagues from the social and human science, they're more focused about how to really help the scientists. To really to get back to the study. And if you have any other comment, any others, please make those of you. Yeah.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you for the distinguished delegate of Switzerland. Yes, there are different stakeholders on the ground trying to support. For example, there is the science sectors, which our colleagues in social sciences are working with in order to collect information about the scientists and the personnel. And inside Ukraine also, there are the partners who helped us to collect the data, Royal Academy of Sciences, National Academy of Sciences, and there are other stakeholders trying to support financially, like European Union and so on. Yes, you are right, there are different stakeholders. From our side, this report actually was one of the means to understand the situation better. So your question is very valid. What exists in order to know what to do? This was the purpose of the report. The data is, for us, give us a clear image of the current landscape and what we can do and with whom we can work. And this is what we are trying to do, and this what we propose today as a potential plan is just an initial preliminary idea, and we hope we can do. And in order actually to implement this preliminary plan, we need the contribution from all these different stakeholders. So we hope we can identify more stakeholders to support this soon, and also to give more information about who can be on the ground to help us and to answer your question. And just to comment on the other questions from the permanent visit of Japan, this is the scientists, and I think my colleague Kostas maybe is able to answer this better because this falls under the data collected from the report. As we identified in the report, many of the scientists actually immigrated. They left the country. About more than 5,500 left the country because they couldn't perform the research there or due to other circumstances. And more than 4,500 were internally displaced. So basically, they cannot also perform their research. So the total of 12% share of the current scientists are obliged to immigrate or relocate since February 2022. The rest of the scientists who remain in their institutions, as we presented, they are under some difficult environmental work conditions due to the lack of financial support for research and other things. And these are the things we are also trying to address. I know my colleague, maybe Kostas wants to comment on that.
Thank you, Mal. Many thanks for the questions. Ambassador, actually that would be an excellent idea for a program that we can work together with Switzerland. Indeed, there's an increasing number of initiatives, a lot under the banner of the European Union, but also by individual institutions. It makes perfect sense to do a comprehensive mapping. We have been taking into account what is out there in conducting this research, but I think the key issue that comes out is that despite all these efforts, there is a need for further investigation of what are actually the constraints, the challenges that our scientists facing. You heard I am only quoting one research that was conducted in this respect. It means that's a gap. This is something that is under assessed, under evaluated. And so, however, knowing a bit better what are the gaps of all these initiatives, I think would be an excellent parallel initiative. So if that would be something to explore, we would be happy to engage in further conversations. Clearly, we're not about going in directions that are not part of the DNA of our institution, and you've heard in the number of gaps that I mentioned in my presentation and recommendations for the way forward. The emphasis is really a lot on policy environments and how we create a better ecosystem that will support scientists. And so we're at this point of our work, initial, but we hope we will be able to generate additional support to be able to really provide the input and the guidance and the opportunities for dialogue for Ukrainian stakeholders and other interested partners. Regarding the question that came from the delegate of Japan, I would say that, first of all, as you've heard, the scientists are subject to Martial law, and therefore there is already a limitation as regards international mobility. And another point that I would like to raise is the limited data, again, that we have on the situation of scientists shows that one, which is of course obvious for all Ukrainian citizens, their financial situation and livelihood has deteriorated substantially. And importantly, since we're looking into this particular category as an asset for the country's construction, future reconstruction, their conditions allowing them to do their work have worsened as well. There are some statistics, but again, I think the point that we need to highlight is that we're facing important data gaps, and it would be significant that we're able to address them before going forward and being able to really work together with the Ukrainian partners in policy support and further initiatives that they may wish to consider. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I just want to emphasize that this report was commissioned as part of the organization's efforts to monitor the damage in Ukraine as reported in the Executive Board document 2017-4IH, where and this is entitled the UNESCO's Actions and Emergency Assistance Programs in Ukraine, so this was done within this frame. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think this is with this. I think we can maybe go ahead for a coffee break. We only have 5 minutes right now. Oh, less than 5 minutes.
Laboratoire de physique des deux infinis, Irène Joliot-Curie. It's a joint unit between s.n.s et l'Université de Paris-Saclay here in Paris. And then we also have Ms. Kristina Nadutенko, who is a professor at the Department of Theoretical Physics at the National University of Lviv in Ukraine, and she was also the awardee of the 2023 L'Oréal UNESCO for Women in Science and Talents Program, Young Talents Program for Ukraine. So I'm very, very happy to have you all here with me today. And I might start by asking the first question to Maxim. So Maxim, as we said, you were involved in the report that we're presenting here today. And my question is, how have the findings of this report impacted your understanding of the challenges which are facing Ukraine's scientific community? So from the inside, getting the data, collecting the data, putting it all together, what are your understanding of the findings on the Ukrainian scientific community?
Thank you. Dear colleagues, dear listeners, thank you for the invitation. The most important is that we know that people were killed, scientists were killed, and their available knowledge cannot be passed on to other colleagues or future generations. And the main one of the problems is that in some cases it is difficult to make an assessment of destroyed, since many specialists of the institutions died, as there is no one to deal with this issue. Also, many institutions are located in territories temporarily occupied by Russian Federation. Also, for an accurate assessment of the damages, it is necessary to invite specialists and conduct an audit, which requires additional and significant funding. It is over $10 million, and we don't have such a fund. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And in your view, what would be the most pressing needs for scientific infrastructure development in Ukraine? And thinking about the future, how can the international collaboration contribute to addressing some of these needs?
Thank you. Thank you. In short, we need to strengthen and develop the infrastructure of scientific and educational centers of National Academy of Sciences and Junior Academy of Sciences. And of course we need technical support. Not only distance support, but the equipment in places. Also, informal horizontal interaction of scientists from different countries, educational clusters, training and internship is needed. Because it is also important to feel the partner head of a fellow scientist from another country. This would be a significant contribution to the support of Ukraine science, to the development of partnership for the sake of peace and for the victory of Ukraine.
Thank you very much. So it's in line with what Alan was presenting before, looking into emergency repairs, then financial reports, and then also working on re-establishment of national and international collaborations in science going forward. I'm going to turn to Christina now. And Christina, we would like to know, you are a scientist who is currently working in science, involved in research and innovation. So what are the main obstacles you are facing today, and how do you see this could possibly be addressed in the recovery plan?
Thank you so much for the question. And first of all, I would like to thank the possibility to discuss all these problems here. And it's extremely important to understand that we are not alone. We are not alone at the time of the war. We are not alone. It's a dangerous time for us. I can't express my feelings right now because we live on the threat. We live on the threat daily. We do not know what will be tomorrow. We do not know, even we do not know what we will have in 1 hour, in 1 minute, because we hear air alarms daily. We hear air alarms daily and we don't expect, because we do not know if we will be alive. So my story, my feelings and my thoughts about all this situation are the following. So first of all, our life is not the same as was before the war. First of all, our daily life is not the same. It's the conditions has changed. So also scientific process is not the same and educational process. I teach students. I'm professor at the Department of Theoretical Physics at the National University of V.W. I am also the researcher at the National University of V.W. I'm proud of my students and I love science so much. But at the time of war, I have to understand that my scientific work, my educational work, has to be combined with volunteer work, because the armed forces of Ukraine give us possibility to live. This is extremely important. So I live and I do science because of this extremely important things that do for us, the armed forces of Ukraine. So the scientific and the educational processes were changed extremely, but we do all the best, all things that we can do today to survive all our establishment, to survive all our serious and processes, scientific processes, because we understand that to keep that scientific front strong is extremely important nowadays. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina, and absolutely, I mean, the scientists are first and foremost humans, and they have to go through all the different feelings and sensations that other people do, while also then keeping the investment of all different types in the scientific process, in the educational resources and others. And I know we've been working on open science, in particular with colleagues in Ukraine, and they really embrace the idea of open science, particularly in these times, to see how they can work in some kind of innovative, remote and other ways to be able to maintain the research and innovation as much as possible in the current situation. Sergey, I have a question for you. So, have you seen any specific differences in the engagement of Ukrainian scientists in the different international scientific projects? And if you did, why is that important, and what could be the possible impact on the future of science in Ukraine?
Thank you very much, Anna, for the question. So I'm following the Ukrainian contributions to international collaborations. First of all, the numerous research and pedagogical collaborations between France and Ukraine, and also via contributions of Ukrainian teams at CERN. So first, I'd like to say that despite the difficult situation now, there is still unique expertise in many aspects in terms of research personalities in Ukraine, and which is even more important, research teams. Important conclusions are in the report. So what we see a reduced budget for research, we see reduced salaries, we see the damaged buildings and equipment, and we see reduced manpower. And here I would also mention the contribution coming from the university students of master level, with their contribution to research, which is quite visible today and which will essentially be critical tomorrow. Then, in addition, we have to add that many students, professors, researchers, in addition to their nominal activities, they are doing a volunteering work to support the country, to support the army in their spare time. So, all in all, the situation becomes more and more critical. On the other hand, what contributes now to support the research in Ukraine is the international attention, which increased with respect to before. And in this situation, we also see examples of just outstanding expertise and motivation. So I could flash you just two very brief examples. One is on the Kharkiv Institute's Academic Institute for Scintillating Materials, which has not stopped their activity for a single day since the first day of the invasion, despite being very close to the border. So they moved their experimental and production activities to the underground, and their activities were lasting from Monday morning until Friday evening, and then the weekend they were moving home. And they have not stopped, and they were complying with every single engagement in all the international research collaboration. Another one, in November, we were going with my colleague from OFSE and another colleague from CERN to teach for 1 week to Kiev. And there are a lot of air alerts every day, still now. And then during the first teaching day, when my colleague was teaching, there was an alert, and we had to move to the shelter, and the nearest shelter was a subway. And a colleague of mine was continuing the teaching in the subway with more than 50 students around. with people around who were joining, and I think this was the feeling that they need to see that they are accompanied, that they are not just abandoned even during the era that like that. So maybe just before I conclude, I'm perhaps speaking too much, there is just one more message to complete the answer to your question, that I find quite dangerous the considerations that we hear often, that now we have to discuss how to rebuild the Ukrainian research after the war. I think that if we don't act now, there will be very little to rebuild after the war. So I think we have to make an effort and to see how to support the Ukrainian researchers, and in particular the Ukrainian research in Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you very much on that, and also on reminding us of the resilience really of the Ukrainian research system and Ukrainian researchers, and talking about what is happening now and the support that they are receiving in this moment. I'm going to turn to Frederick and ask about the Commission, and of course how the Commission has been supporting Ukrainian scientists and scientific systems, but also what is the plan from the Commission in terms of supporting Ukraine in this recovery plan as well.
Thank you very much. Let me begin by saying that the European Commission expresses its solidarity with Ukraine, including its research community, on a daily basis in facing the war of aggression, unprovoked and unjustified war of aggression of Russia against Ukraine. The intellectual assets of Ukraine are a necessity for a sustainable and modern future for Ukraine. And in recognition of this, the European Commission does 3 things to support Ukraine. We have set out to sustain the scientific system of Ukraine. And this started in the very beginning of the war. The basis for this is Ukraine's association to Horizon Europe. If you don't know what Horizon Europe is, it is the EU's flagship research and innovation program of almost 100 billion euros. And it allows for the participation of third countries under association, meaning that they participate on par with EU member states in the program. Normally, to do this, a third country will have to pay a little fee. Amongst these countries are now also Canada and New Zealand and the United Kingdom and many other countries. In the case of Ukraine, we have waived this participation fee, meaning that Ukrainian researchers can participate in Horizon Europe on par with the EU member states. And Horizon Europe is a global, collaborative, and competitive funding program. And it is quite competitive. It's quite difficult to get funding from. Nonetheless, you might ask, how does Ukraine fare in this program? And they do quite well, actually. There have been 190 different participation in the Horizon Europe program so far, allocating 37.8 million euros to Ukraine. And this is funding that's not been earmarked and conceded to Ukraine. This is just based on the excellence of Ukrainian researchers, which only shows, first of all, the scientific potential of Ukraine, but also the resilience of Ukraine's scientific system. Now, their participation in Horizon Europe has furthermore been supported by a string of support measures. I will mention a few of them. Our foremost support measure is the Horizon Europe office in Ukraine. It's a new support measure we launched in December last year, and it's set out to improve participation in Horizon Europe. It does so through communication activities, events, but also trainings. And it's hosted by the National Research Foundation of Ukraine. We have also earmarked funding for Ukrainians. This is under, for example, the prestigious Marie Skłodowska Curie Action, where we earmarked 25 million euros to Ukrainian researchers to finish their doctoral studies. We also have, and this plays a little bit into what was said in the previous session, the Horizon Fellowship, which is a fellowship dedicated to remote participation in research or infrastructure in the EU. And then quickly, the two other ways we support Ukraine. We also support Ukraine through reconstruction. On the 27th of February, the European Council, the Council of the European Union and the European Parliament agreed on the Ukraine facility. It is a 50 billion euro instrument targeting Ukraine's short-term and medium-term recovery until 2027. And the key word for the Ukraine facility is flexibility. It puts 50 billion there for Ukraine to use, and they can use it according to their needs. This can be both short-term microfinancial assistance, just keeping the normal day-to-day running, but it can also be for reconstruction in the medium term. And it will be implemented with Ukraine through a Ukraine plan. Now we're still waiting for this Ukraine plan to be adopted, but I would encourage you to keep an eye on what's going to be in there and how much the scientific community is going to feature here. And then lastly, because this answer is taking some time, because of proximity to Ukraine and because of Ukraine's explicit wish to accede into our union, we also support Ukraine in its accession. And we have to recognize that for Ukraine to accede into the union, they will have to comply with a list of legislative acts and principles, which we refer to as the EU Acquis. One of these chapters of the EU Acquis is the chapter on research and innovation. And we also set up support measures for helping Ukraine to comply with these legislative acts and principles in the EU Acquis. We have a policy support facility freely available to Ukraine that will set up a panel of experts to evaluate the Ukrainian scientific system and propose support and reform measures that can be made. The Horizon Europe Office, as I mentioned before, has also been set out to provide policy advice for Ukraine's integration into our European research area. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frederick, and I do hope that you will find the report today useful in terms of looking into the Ukrainian plan and other ways in which the European Commission intends to support the Ukrainian research and development system going forward. Christina, I have another question for you. Looking into the future, what role do you think Ukrainian scientists can play to contribute to the country's overall recovery efforts, and both in terms of scientific advancement and also societal impact? So what role for science and what role for scientists?
Thank you so much. Thank you for the question. So what about the future? What about our plans and what can we do right now? First of all, I have to say that we have to develop different processes, not only science. We have to develop various processes in our social life. And science is extremely important also nowadays, science and education, because we can find the way to keep the strong position in science and education right now if we try to do all the best right now, even in the case of war, even in the case of air alliance, even in the case when people die. I understand every day that every moment is extremely important, and we try to do all the best daily. So what about recovery of all these dangerous things? Because many scientists died. We cannot expect what we will have tomorrow, but now we understand that we lost people, we lost scientific results, we lost possibilities. Therefore, it's extremely important to develop nowadays with extremely great enthusiasm, develop everything we can do for our Ukraine science, for science in Ukraine, and also for education in Ukraine. So we need funding, first of all, we need funding, we need equipment, we need possibility to teach the students which are relocated, for instance, relocated to live to one university. So we need a lot of resources, and I have to say many thanks for my colleagues that help us in extremely hard situation, that I hope that they will help us in future also. But the support is very, very powerful for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And also, of course, science and education kind of go hand in hand. So looking into science without looking into education is very difficult, both, of course, today and going forward. And looking into culture as well, so kind of resonates also, again, with the core missions of these organizations right here. Sergey, I have just one question for you. From some of the good experiences in international collaborations with Ukrainian scientists that have positively impacted the resilience of research in Ukraine, what lessons can be learned? How we can learn from these experiences, again, for now, for the future, but also for any other possible conflict that can be somewhere else in the world as well.
Thank you for this difficult question now. I think that maybe I will start from a couple of tentative conclusions. That so far, based on different research teams, we have very good collaboration experiences. And we see that we find essentially in every topic a very good complementary expertise. And what we've learned, for example, within the experience for 10 years now, this French-Ukrainian associated laboratory, that this joint contribution from French partners, Ukrainian partners, for example, is extremely strong. I can mention a school of theoretical physics in Kharkiv, founded still by Landau a long time ago. I can mention the experience in scintillating material again in Kharkiv. I can mention the expertise in nuclear physics and again theoretical physics in Kiev research institutes and many others. And in each case, we were able to find really precious complementary expertise to make joint contributions to big international projects. I can give you one example, maybe is quite recent, is a development of a new luminosity detector for one of the 4 biggest experiments at Large Hadron Collider, which was a collaboration of 2 Kharkiv research institutes, Kiev University, ORSE, Lausanne, Bologna, and CERN, with the major contribution coming from Ukraine. This was a unique detector constructed, operating now at CERN. And during this very short period of just point-like collaboration, the colleagues in Ukraine implemented few innovative techniques for research of radiation-resistant materials for use in accelerators. So this was just an invitation for 2 Ukrainian teams to join collaboration. Another one, and maybe my colleague from the European Commission is aware of that, just before a couple of years before COVID, there was a proposal from a professor in Ukraine to just technological one, but which allowed to have a completely different approach for irradiation techniques for treatment of cancer. So this technology for phantom production was appreciated largely and received a very strong financial contribution from European Commission via Science and Technology Center in Ukraine, which allowed to construct the two research platforms into major Ukrainian universities. So there are often bright ideas, and I mean, we're talking about helping Ukraine now, which is natural. But the fact is that, I mean, we're also profiting from this kind of collaborations. And maybe this helps to be more creative in the ways of how to support this kind of actions in Ukraine.
Thank you very much, and I really appreciate this point on complementarity and friend expertise, and looking into future partnerships, building on that complementarity around different world and through the different partners that are part of those future partnerships as well. A very short question for Maxim, if I can, on the future role possibly of the Junior Academy of Sciences, the National Academy of Sciences, again in the implementation of the recovery plan, and also going forward looking into the research and development systems in Ukraine.
Thank you for the question. Junior Academy of Sciences is a leading center of Ukraine for school students who want to do science. Recently we have created more than 10 educational and scientific centers of the Junior Academy of Sciences, consisting of educational museums and laboratories. They are located in safe areas, mainly in western Ukraine, as well as Kiev, Poltava, etc. And in this way, we create conditions for the development of talented children. But the operation of such centers requires a significant amount of scientific equipment. And we are sure that interested organizations and parties in European countries and other countries could help with the solution of this issue. The task of Junior Academy of Sciences is to prepare young scientists that will rebuild the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. And just turning back to Frederick for my last question, more broadly, how can the scientific community globally contribute to supporting Ukraine's recovery efforts beyond financial assistance?
Thank you very much. I think first of all we should recognize the potential science has in itself, right? Ukraine's recovery is more than what was said before, brick and mortar, and science has a role to play in that. One example I have from the EU side, our Joint Research Center, which is our own EU body for research, provided early assessment scenarios and situation reports on the terrible disaster after the Novakova Dam collapse. Right? This is just one example of how research and science can play a role already now in sustaining Ukraine and its infrastructure as it is, but also when we talk about the first steps in reconstructions, for example, wider analysis of the impact of environmental damage on Ukraine, for example, to know where we have to put our money in Ukraine's recovery. Another example I was given by my Japanese colleague in Brussels was that the Japanese government is using some advanced mine clearing technology that they've developed through the Japan International Cooperation Agency, where they have partnered together with Poland and Cambodia to train personnel of the Ukrainian State Emergency Service to use this technology for mine clearing in Ukraine. These are some of the more immediate ways that science can play a role in Ukraine's recovery. And then I think we should think about it in more medium and long term as well. And we need to build up Ukraine's scientific system better than it was before. Ukraine had and still has an enormous scientific potential. But Ukraine also has a future ahead of it. And it might also be in the European Union. But for that to be the case, reform measures are needed. At the same time, science is also a powerful tool in growth, which we've seen in countries like Finland or South Korea or Japan. So what I would like to advocate for is, again, collaborative science. Is for the scientific community to open up with possibilities for Ukrainian scientists to work together internationally, to both bring more knowledge back to Ukraine that could be a driver for Ukraine's construction, not only as it was, but a sustainable and modern Ukraine. But also to learn about how science is done in other countries, how the scientific systems look in other countries, and can bring this experience back to reform Ukraine so we can do science even better. And in this way, we also do something in the European Union to help Ukraine. We have what we call a hop-on facility. So for projects that are already awarded grants under Horizon Europe, we offer the opportunity for countries of low R&I performance, low performance in research and innovation, to jump onto them. So we pay a little bit extra to facilitate the participation of entities from one of these countries. Ukraine is one of these countries. We also have the ERC for Ukraine portal. And the ERC, just to make it quick, is the European Research Council, which is our most prestigious grants out there, and it provides grants for the absolute most excellent researchers. Some of them are Nobel Prize winners, to set up a team to conduct research. The ERC for Ukraine portal is a portal with job opportunities both for researchers but also support staff to jump on these teams and have some temporary employment. But also an opportunity to learn something, bring knowledge back to Ukraine and learn about how science is done in the European Union and its associated countries.
Thank you very much. And with this and looking at the time, I will thank all the panelists. There will be time for questions from the audience in the general discussions later on. But at this stage, I think I'm going to give it back to the Master of Ceremony, Jean-Francois, for the rest of the session. And then, as I said, we'll have the speakers back at the podium and responding to questions from the audience. So thank you very much again. Thank you for letting us know what is happening in Ukraine now, what the challenges are, and also what the possible plans for the future are. Thank you again.
$1.6 billion of our budget goes to support STEM education in all fields. We support about 2,000 institutions and more than 350,000 researchers, including technicians, students, graduate students, faculty, and other personnel who is involved in research. We are also proud to claim that we support 258 Nobel Prize winners before they got their Nobel Prizes. And this number is not updated for this year, Nobel Prizes. It should be updated. Next slide, please.
So in addition to supporting research, we also support facilities and infrastructure everywhere in the world. This picture just illustrates where the support is and where the facilities are supported, instruments and the whole research infrastructure. Majority of it is, of course, in the US, but we also support infrastructure everywhere in the world where it would be useful for researchers to do their research, especially if American researchers are involved. Next slide, please. So today I'll be mostly talking about one of the newest initiatives, which is called IMPRESS-U. DCL stands for Dear Colleague Letter, and this is a formal announcement of the program. And IMPRESS-U stands for International Multilateral Partnerships for Resilient Education and Science System in Ukraine. Next slide, please. This is indeed multilateral initiative. We have partners from US and around the world, and you can see the partners here listed. So the initiative is led by my office, it's Office of International Science and Engineering, but the whole National Science Foundation is involved. All directorates and all program directors who have expertise to relevant projects, we are all involved in the initiative and reviewing the proposals, making co-funding contributions and so forth. So another partner is National Academy of Sciences, Engineering and Medicine, and this is US Academy. Office of Naval Research Global, who is serving as a coordinator. So National Academy of Sciences serves as a coordinator for funding to Ukraine, and I will tell a little bit more about this later. Office of Naval Research Global serves as a coordinator for the DoD participation in this program, Department of Defense. In addition, we have Estonian Research Council, Latvian Council of Science, Research Council of Lithuania, two agencies from Poland, National Science Center and National Agency for Academic Exchange, and National Research Foundation of Ukraine. In addition to that, we have private donors and foundations who are not necessarily want to be named, but they are donating money for Ukrainian scientists. This money will be coordinated by the National Academy of Sciences to be sent to Ukraine. So participation of Ukrainian scientists is a priority here, and scientists from Ukraine, wherever they are stationed right now, can participate in this initiative, even if they are in a third country, not necessarily listed here. But the priority and the review makes for researchers who are currently in Ukraine, who did not leave or did leave but returned, and the ones who are continuing doing research staying in Ukraine. Next slide, please. So there are two major goals of this initiative. One is to support excellence in science and engineering, research, education, and innovation through international collaboration. And the next one is promote and catalyze integration of Ukrainian researchers in the global research community. Next slide, please. Among funding mechanisms we support, this initiative supports only two special grants which are allowed by NSF. So one is EAGER. These are very prestigious early concept grants for exploratory research proposal. That means that the grants and research which is proposed is so novel and proposes some new untested ideas in the field, and maybe these ideas are so new that nobody has tested them, nobody maybe even thought about it, and this is something absolutely novel and unique, which may be proposing interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, or unusual approaches to addressing science challenges. And another special mechanism for funding is supplements. These are international supplements to existing awards, which means that somebody who is already funded by NSF can submit a supplement request to expand their research and include international collaboration. In this particular case, they will expand with the requirements of IMPRESS-U program. The requirements for proposals for both EAGERs and supplements within IMPRESS-U initiative are almost similar. Next slide. So there are specific priorities which we put for all proposals across the board. First is creative and novel actually ways for enhancing efficiency and resiliency of international partnerships. Next one is efficient and novel concepts to prepare internationally engaged research workforce. And the next one is efficient and significant contributions to build a modern state-of-the-art research, education, innovation ecosystem in Ukraine. So which proposals have to propose that? These are not just priorities of the initiative, they are, but they are also turned into requirements for the proposals. Next slide, please. So here are the proposal requirements. And in addition to normal, regular intellectual merit and broader impact criteria which are applied across the board to all proposals submitted to NSF, the initiative has special requirements for the proposals submitted to impress you. So novelty, again, in reference to eager proposals and supplements, novelty is important. So this program is not assistance program. This is really cutting-edge collaborative research. So in the novelty, PIs have to address what is the novelty of the proposed approaches to address the challenge and why would they work. So while research which they propose could be very new and novel and untested, the PIs have to be convincing enough to explain not only what science challenge they are going to tackle, what impact will it do for society, but also why would they think it work and what are the tested mechanisms or what are their speculations about why would this work, whatever they propose. Exploratory nature is another one, and this is about what is eager, right? So what is exploratory and untested of the proposed projects. Another aspect here is high risk, high reward, and transformative nature of the research as proposed. Resilient partnerships, what are creative ways to perform research leading to resilient and efficient international partnerships, who are the partners and what are their contributions and roles in the project. Workforce, as I said before, what are efficient concepts to prepare internationally engaged and highly skilled research workforce. And of course, this goes well beyond regular training or remote seminars, webinars, or remote experimentations or anything like that. So we have seen tons of interesting and novel ideas on what people prepare. Many Ukrainian institutions are already involved in collaboration with American institutions, and many students are attending remotely lectures by American professors at American institutions, which we are very pleased to see. And the last requirement is future of Ukraine. So what is the significant contribution to build modern state-of-the-art research, education, innovation ecosystem in Ukraine? How will this serve to integrate Ukrainian researchers into global research community? Next slide, please. So how does it work? I mean, the procedure is rather complex, and I will not stop on this just to save time. The only thing I want to say is that the PRSU is multi-stage competition. So it involves, as I said, all NSF, and many NSF program directors are reviewing proposals. First stage is concept outline. It's very short, about 2-page submission, and PIs have to explain what are their ideas, who are the partners, what will they do. And then, if they are invited, and they can submit for proposal or for supplement request by invitation from our office only. If they are not invited, they cannot submit. So when proposal is submitted, it goes into regular review, very rigorous review process of NSF, and then final recommendation is made by all international partners who are involved in the competition. And I will stop here. So next slide, please. Here's our current status, and we are oversubscribed. So we planned to make about 10 to 15 maximum awards. 10 awards are already made, and we are still continuing proposals. We are planning to make much more awards. We don't know how many. There is no deadline, so proposals are submitted all the time, and we are reviewing them as they are submitted. So we are very happy with the outcomes because the ideas which are proposed, both the quality and number of proposals is way beyond what we expected. And now we have a different problem. We don't have enough money to support all the projects which are of excellent quality and which we would like to support. But that's typical for NSF. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. Here is my email. I am happy to take questions and answer any questions and any suggestions you have. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kapula, for this very interesting introduction about the Impress U. Next, I would like to welcome Ms. Vivi Stavoro, Executive Secretary of the International Science Council, ISC Committee for Freedom and Responsibility in Science, and the ISC Senior Science Officer. She will reflect in her talk on putting science on the agenda for post-crisis recovery, exploring recovery strategies after crisis, and leverage the support of the scientific and international community. Mr. Sadar leads the International Science Council's portfolio of activities concerning the free and responsible conduct of science. Ms. Stavro is a clinical psychologist and development worker with extensive international experience in humanitarian emergencies and post-complex situations as a social development consultant, evaluator, and researcher. She has worked with UN and development agencies, government ministries and services, and academic institutions in the area of child protection, mental health, and psychosocial support and health system development, health and human rights, and security sector reform. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Excellencies, colleagues. Thank you for the honor of speaking today representing the International Science Council, the ISC. Let me see if I can get this right. I think let's go to the next slide. Thank you. The ISC is the primary NGO representing the global scientific community across basic and applied, natural and social sciences. The Council has over 250 members from across the world and is made up of national academies, international disciplinary bodies, science funding agencies, and other scientific organizations. As we've heard from the previous speakers and witnessed throughout history, crises, whether they be wars, natural disasters, or pandemics, inevitably disrupt societies and economies. The road to recovery is long and arduous. Communities are left grappling with numerous challenges, including rebuilding infrastructure, restoring livelihoods, addressing health and mental health needs, and fostering social cohesion. Amidst these challenges, science and international scientific collaboration have proven to be invaluable assets in rebuilding communities and fostering resilience. Now I want to broaden and elaborate on the role of science in times of crisis, and I'll do so by drawing from the ISC's experiences in this respect. Next slide, please. The ISC's program on science in times of crisis came about as a response to the increasing number of scientists and scholars who are at risk, who have been forced to leave their country or workplace because of the threats they've received in the course of conducting and communicating their scientific research. This is how we started. These numbers have grown exponentially. We exist at a time in which war, disasters, and climate change impact almost every corner of the globe. As we face more likelihood of strategic instability, further wars pandemics, big population shifts precipitated by climate change, we must start to think more systematically about the impact of such events on the scientific ecosystem. Our work, the ISC's work on science in times of crisis, involves two strands. The partnership work with the Inter-Academy Partnership and UNESCO TWICE, that began in TWICE is the World Academy of Sciences, that began in 2018 in putting the Science in Exile network together, and the ISC's broader portfolio of work in Science in Times of Crisis initiative that brings perspective on crises affecting science systems globally. As part of Science in Exile, we started a crisis support mechanism. The Science Stakeholders Crisis Group was first activated for Afghanistan at the end of 2021 and for Ukraine in March 2022 with the escalation of war, of aggression in Ukraine. Membership of the crisis groups these are networking groups. They continue. The Ukraine group continues. Members of some of the groups, representatives of some of the groups and from the government in Ukraine are members of the Ukraine crisis group. They serve as platforms during war, during crisis, for information exchange and support. And membership includes members of the scientific community from the affected countries, members from the NGOs and the UN agencies with a mandate to work with scholars at risk, and broader people, representatives from the broader scientific ecosystem, including funders and publishers. Coming out of this Ukraine crisis group were two conferences examining the impact of the war on Ukrainian scientists and science systems, analyzing responses by the European higher education and research sectors, and offering recommendations for support, including the rebuilding of the higher education and research sectors after the conflict. If we could go to the next slide. Now, a gap emerged in the years of doing this work, namely that the science sector needs to examine the impact of shocks and crises on itself. We have enormous expertise in researching the impact of crises on individuals, on societies, analyzing this, but we put very little effort and reflection on how it impacts on ourselves as scientists and on the scientific ecosystem. The report, Protecting Science in Times of Crisis, How Do We Stop Being Reactive and Become More Proactive, addresses the urgent need for a new approach to safeguard science and its practitioners during disasters and war. The publication draws on lessons learned from case studies across the world and across different crisis contexts. We looked at wars in the Balkans, in Ukraine. We interviewed representatives from South Africa when their national archives burnt down in a building that was designed allegedly to survive that. We interviewed colleagues from Brazil after their natural history museum burnt down. So various case studies. We also brought insight, and this was mentioned just now, from the science, development, and humanitarian sectors, as well as relevant learning from other domains such as education, culture, and heritage. There is currently no global framework, unlike for education and culture, in which to understand the long-term needs of science systems, which can help frame both preventative and emergency measures, as well as post-crisis rebuilding priorities and strategies for science. The paper is a first step towards scoping a more effective, joined-up and predictable approach to the protection and rebuilding of science systems so that the world is still able to benefit from scientific teaching and discovery even when conflict and disaster strike. Next slide, please. Now, the findings from our work to date suggest that too often the scientific community's response to crisis remains uncoordinated, ad hoc, reactive, and limited. The escalation of war in Ukraine has brought attention to the global consequences of whole-scale attacks on higher education and science systems. Only when we think globally and holistically do our shared responsibilities as the scientific community appear clearly. Key components for recovery strategies begin with what was there in the first place. We live in an era of polycrises and need to be prepared. The paper borrows from the humanitarian emergency approach, if we can go to the next slide, aimed at preparation and prevention. Looking at preparation and prevention, crisis responses, and a sustainable approach to recovery and development that effectively integrates science into post-crisis recovery. All actors from the science and research sector share a responsibility to better prepare for crises, as that is the only way to enhance the resilience of the sector as a whole. This includes identifying how they can better prepare their own communities and institutions to manage risk and to respond to risk, and clarifying how they can support scientists everywhere affected by crisis. There's a big disconnect between the scientific community and the crisis management community. The sector needs to take greater responsibility for its internal risk assessment and mitigation, to build the capacity of scientists and scientific leaders in crisis and risk management, to give more resources for prevention, and to help develop action frameworks with partner sectors. An important factor in preparation that becomes critical in the recovery and rebuilding phase is making the case for the value of science, working with scientific leadership and science brokers in the policy and political space to navigate political barriers and highlight that a well-funded science and technology sector is core to every domain of national well-being and development. We hear from Ukrainian colleagues about how important it is to work with their government to make science and technology an essential part of the vision of Ukraine's future and strategy for reconstruction, and to support systemic reforms in higher education, science and technology. Likewise, widening and deepening public understanding of the value and return on investment of science is a critical step in increasing trust in and support for science. Policies and actions that enhance public trust and state support for science are needed. Next slide. During wars, we save people first. Scientists are at the heart of science. When people are able, when they feel safe, and in some instances, even when they are only relatively safe, they will get back to work. We've seen this very clearly in Ukraine. Remember, over 80% of Ukrainian scientists remained in Ukraine, and despite overwhelming odds, are attempting to continue with their work. A key priority in post-war rebuilding is investing in people, preserving and developing human capital in the science, technology, and education sectors. The science and research sector needs to respond in a timely and predictable manner, improving mechanisms for coordination and information sharing among higher education and science actors to protect researchers and scientific assets during crises. Next slide. In national or large-scale emergencies, science tends to fall through the cracks. The result is a lack of information about the affected scientists, their needs, and even their whereabouts. This knowledge gap damages the effectiveness of coordination mechanisms and the sector's wider understanding of the crisis response. Despite the best efforts of dedicated science humanitarians, if I may use that term, the response of organized science to an emerging crisis is often ad hoc and reactive, rather than there being a clarity of sector-wide roles and responses. The longer that human and material needs go unmet, with scientists out of work, the likelier it is that the key competencies and knowledge will be lost. Supporting scientists during the early stages of crisis means that they can become more helpful in the post-crisis rebuilding phase, providing support from home or from abroad. Ways forward include improving mechanisms. I'll go through this very quickly because you've all discussed it and the report is very clear about going through all of this. Improving mechanisms for coordination and information sharing among local and international science actors. Improving protection, storage, curation, and access to data. Data is critical, as well as the production of data documenting the crisis on scientists and their needs. And we heard today about the value of that research in describing and analyzing an ongoing, dangerous, and very volatile situation. Making more flexible and remote programs and funding that enable scholars to continue with teaching, research, and publication that support brain drain that support brain circulation rather than brain drain. Working with other elements of the science sector, such as publishing, to improve access to science resources when they are most needed. Next slide, please. We have heard how international cooperation and collaboration are essential for pooling resources, sharing knowledge, seeking guidance, and implementing effective recovery strategies. If we can go to the next slide, then we'll come back from this. I'm sorry, you're looking at me doing the slide rather than my communication team putting together the PowerPoint. The science and research sector are rarely treated as a priority in the rebuilding efforts of national and international authorities. Therefore, the initiative of smaller entities, such as research agencies, universities, academies, scientific unions, and professional associations, and even individuals, are critical to bridge the gap in scientific collaboration. The solidarity shown and the support offered by the international scientific community towards Ukrainian scientists has been substantial and is ongoing. The responsiveness and outreach from the Ukrainian government and Ukrainian scientists has been astonishing. Trusted partners play a critical role in convening safe platforms for bi- and multilateral collaboration. If we can go back to see the infographic. Oh, we are here. Sorry. Yeah, if we can go back. Thanks. Here we see real transformation for, in terms of ensuring a stronger recovery, it would involve incentivizing and enabling collaboration between local and international science actors, insisting on standards that cultivate mutual trust and respect, and making use of today's drivers of change, such as long-term scientific partnerships, young academies, mobilizing the science diaspora, and competitive funding processes with independent evaluation. And I've listed some of the best practices that have emerged in the conferences, in the course of writing this report, and also in some of the international meetings that have taken place, including Ukrainian science and looking at recovery. With all of these transformative factors that are busy being developed, the focus should be on first addressing the urgent needs of the science system and then attempting long-term reforms. The international scientific and policy community need to tread carefully here. Support and solidarity must be respectful of local agency and leadership. The way science systems are organized within a society is influenced by culture, history, and context. Striving towards policy coherence is a difficult and politically fraught process under the best of circumstances. Trusted international partners can play an important role in strengthening the capacity and expertise for science and technology policy among policymakers. And then if we can move forward to the next one and the next one, that's the last one. Creating an enabling environment for the free and responsible practice of science. Scientists can only contribute to post-war recovery if they have an enabling environment. This is more than funds to support research, more than infrastructure to work in, and tools to use for their research. It also means an environment that welcomes critique and merit-based competition, that respects and safeguards ethical and responsible science, that supports open science and respects diverse identities and knowledge systems. And my last point is that science is a critical component of Track 2 relationship building during war. As we navigate today's complex geopolitical landscape, science diplomacy can facilitate cross-border collaborations, knowledge exchange, and capacity building efforts to address shared challenges and promote reconciliation. The formal multilateral Track 1 diplomacy system is not doing too well, and I'm very aware that I'm sitting in a room packed with diplomats. It did poorly during the pandemic. It was the scientists who worked together across the boundaries of public and private science to make vaccines at unprecedented speed. The formal system is not doing well in ensuring progress on climate change as we continue on a path that means that we'll soon be in excess of the agreed 1.5 degrees Celsius ceiling. And under its watch, it allowed the brutality of war to break out in Ukraine and now in Gaza. IC President Sir Peter Gluckman argues that we are entering an era where Track 2 organizations, such as the IC and some of you here, must take a greater role in what he calls Track 2 multilateralism, where scientific cooperation becomes a critical factor in holding our shaky planet together. It's a tall order. As a scientific community, we can either be passive or recognize that in finding ways to help Ukraine, in finding ways to make our science systems more resilient to shocks and wars, we also find ways to ensure our planet's and people's futures. Next slide, please. So thank you very much. Please do contact me if you need any further information. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Navarro, for the interesting talk. Very appreciative. And before we came to the end, let's have another maybe 5 minutes general discussion session and to reflect on the outcome of the symposium and how we can move forward. I invite you to see the other speaker and also Anna to come here. And at the same time, maybe we can open the floor, and if you have any question, I don't know whether from the online and we have any question. Anybody follow on that one? No? Okay, since, yeah, please.
Okay. First of all, I will switch into French because I'm from Paris and from CNRS. Et je voudrais donc remercier énormément tous les speakers de leurs interventions extrêmement intéressantes. Tout a été abordé et je voudrais juste apporter peut-être un témoignage direct des prémices de ce conflit et de comment je pense qu'il faut suivre la protection, assurer la protection de la recherche scientifique en Ukraine pendant le conflit et pour préparer la suite. Donc j'étais très sensible à ce que Sergei Bershuk a dit et notamment le fait qu'il ne faut pas attendre pour reconstruire. Certes, il ne faut pas attendre. Le conflit a aussi attiré l'attention sur la qualité extrêmement importante de la recherche ukrainienne. C'est peut-être l'un des points les plus positifs que je vois de cet affreux conflit. Donc le monsieur de la Commission européenne qui est intervenu l'a souligné par le succès que les chercheurs ukrainiens ont dans les différents programmes. Donc je me présente ce que j'aurais dû faire tout de suite. Je suis Francesca Gracia, je travaille au s.n.s. et j'étais responsable des relations du s.n.s français en 2014 et 2015 notamment, avec l'Ukraine et également avec la Russie. Et j'étais en première ligne avec Sergei Bershuk pour monter cette coopération structurante extrêmement dynamique et qui continue de nos jours. Et j'ai envie de raconter un tout petit peu ce qui s'est passé. J'aurais dû me rendre à Kharkiv le 1er mars 2020. Là, c'est pas le conflit qui avait démarré d'une autre manière par l'annexion de la Crimée et puis dans le Donbass, etc. En 2014, c'était le Covid qui m'a empêché d'aller là-bas. Et quand en février 2022, l'agression a démarré, mes constats ont été, on va dire, des plus secoués, des plus émotionnels, dans la mesure où j'ai eu des témoignages directs de l'attaque qui a été faite sur les établissements et les structures scientifiques à Kharkiv, tout d'abord. Donc la cible était très clairement la recherche et la science, et de manière massive, le rapport l'a souligné. Donc quelque part, j'ai senti fuir sous mes pieds toute la mémoire, tout le patrimoine scientifique et technique que j'aurais dû voir et constater de mes propres yeux le 1er mars 2020, que j'ai raté à cause du Covid et qui allait partir en fumée. Donc ce que je veux dire par là, par ce témoignage qui peut vous paraître un peu décousu, c'est que aujourd'hui je ne suis plus responsable des relations avec ces deux pays, mais je suis à la tête du Comité national de la recherche scientifique. Et il y a 2 ans, jour pour jour, le 11 mars 2022, le Conseil scientifique avait adopté une recommandation en soutien donc, de tous les chercheurs en danger à la suite de l'invasion de l'Ukraine et condamnant fermement l'invasion de l'Ukraine par la Russie le 24 février 2022 et incitant les gouvernements, notamment français, de augmenter l'enveloppe consacrée au programme d'accueil en urgence des scientifiques en exil, pause, et de tous les scientifiques qui sont en danger. Aujourd'hui, ce message qui est consultable, il est public sur le site du Comité national, est encore actuel, mais on se rend compte qu'il était peut-être adopté dans l'urgence, il est trop limité. La science est faite d'individus, certes, qui doivent être mis à l'abri, mais aussi d'infrastructures qui sont en train d'être détruites et aussi d'équipes qui doivent continuer de travailler entre elles. Donc je pense que comme par exemple pour d'autres crises, et notamment le réchauffement climatique, tous les moyens doivent être déployés parallèlement, sans se focaliser sur l'un ou l'autre, mais en les mettant vraiment en complémentarité, de manière à ce que les chercheurs ukrainiens qui peuvent trouver un abri dans d'autres pays, s'ils ne vont pas en combat, s'ils ne continuent pas à mener leurs recherches dans le pays en guerre, et de maintenir les liens entre eux, c'est-à-dire faire en sorte que tout ce tissu organique qui est la recherche scientifique ne soit pas désagrégé, ne soit pas isolé, et donc que la perte d'information liée à la crise et le conflit, à cette perte d'information ne s'ajoute pas l'isolement également, qui fait qu'après, il est très difficile de reconstruire. Donc je n'ai pas en réalité grand-chose de plus à rajouter, à part le fait de veiller aussi à ce que la recherche ukrainienne, qui est des plus hauts niveaux scientifiques, et qui est un patrimoine, donc tout comme l'art qui a pu être pour certaines œuvres d'art dans les musées ukrainiens être mise à l'abri au-delà des frontières pendant la guerre, il faut la mettre à l'abri, et il faut aussi pouvoir aider à ce que la recherche continue de se faire dans le underground, on va dire, localement. Voilà, donc je pense que je m'arrête là, j'étais déjà trop longue, mais merci à vous tous de ce que vous pouvez nous indiquer comme moyen, comme action concrète. À un moment donné, on a pensé pouvoir créer des infrastructures de recherche expatriées au-delà des frontières en guerre. Qu'en est-il de ce projet qui pourrait dans certains cas être vraiment utile pour ne pas affaiblir la science ukrainienne et européenne donc.
Thank you, Madam, and for your observation. I think you see what you talked is very in the line with our ABT talk, and with also she's a member of the speakers talk. We are on the same line, and I don't think you see we need you see any answer for that in your observation. So with this, I think you see maybe I will finally invite Mr. Makola, Mawarcha, and the Minister Counselor, Deputy Permanent Delegate, to offer you for Ukraine to UNESCO, and to give the close remarks, maybe where he will you see the response also to what you mentioned. Thank you. Yeah,
thank you, Mr. Champagne. Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, taking this opportunity of having the floor, let me recall that in Ukraine, what we have currently, unfortunately now, it is not Ukraine crisis or Ukraine war. This is Russia's full-scale war of aggression against Ukraine. I would like to thank UNESCO for convening this important symposium regarding scientific ecosystem in Ukraine. This is the first event of such a kind on science in general, and it's the first event, the first release of the first assessment report analysis of war damage to Ukrainian science sector and its consequences on Ukraine and our country. The symposium was a great opportunity to reflect on the current challenges facing the science sector in Ukraine and the importance of paving the road for a recovery plan aimed at overcoming the consequences of Russia's full-scale war of aggression against Ukraine and damages caused by Russia to the science sector of our country. The report illustrates the significant efforts undertaken to compile data on the war impact on institutes and universities damaged and destroyed by Russian missiles, rockets, drones in our country. The symposium enabled the engagement in a vital discussion on the ongoing challenges facing the science sector, encouraging the dialogue with diverse perspectives, potential recovery strategies. I would like to thank the Junior Academy of Sciences and its president, academician Mr. Stanislav Довгий and his team for enormous efforts and work done to prepare this report, reflecting on the importance of international cooperation and the involvement of multiple stakeholders to recover and strengthen the science sector in Ukraine, ensuring its resilience. I'd like to thank UNESCO Secretariat, and all the partners for organizing this event and for being here. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And with this, I think we close our meeting, our symposium here today. And as I mentioned, usually we will have the reception outside the room. And please enjoy, and thank you again for your participation, and thank you for the online participant as well. Thank you.